And finally this week is Crank High Voltage. If following, picking up exactly where the first one left off. And as you'll recall, the main character fell out of a helicopter, landed on a car, and bounced on the pavement, and probably would have died. I can't imagine that not killing anyone. But in this case, since he blinked right before the credits rolled, that means he was still alive. And it
means that there needs to be a sequel.
And that there needs to be a sequel. And the thing is, I have a lot of complaints about this movie, but surprisingly, the over-the-top nature of the action isn't my biggest one. My biggest one is that this second one is exactly the same as the first. The only thing that has changed is instead of being poisoned and he needs to keep his adrenal glands stimulated, is now he has to periodically charge his artificial heart because the bad guys have taken his heart out and he wants to get it back. Now, for some reason, the bad guys also gave him this artificial heart so that he would stay alive. So I'm not exactly sure why. I guess maybe because we wouldn't have a movie, but structurally, it's exactly the same as the first movie.
Yeah, and this movie, if the first Crank was a 2 on the over-the-top meter, this is like a 45.
It wasn't a 2 either.
This is like a 45 comparatively, because this is that much more ridiculous. He's grabbing onto high voltage wires, and there's so many scenes in this that just don't seem to mesh with the film. There's a scene where he's fighting someone in a power plant, and it cuts to a scene where they're replaced by like Godzilla type foam characters fighting in it.
Yeah, what was the deal with that?
There's
very puzzling.
So many things in this movie that are like that.
I suspect during the writing process, it was written and directed by people calling themselves Neville, Dean, and Taylor. And I suspect during the writing process, they're like, well, what if we do like a Godzilla thing? Sure, why not?
Yeah.
The first film established that this movie is not playing by the
anything
rules.
goes.
So, why not? And, it's one of those things where if you saw the first one and thought, hey, that was a pretty reasonable action movie, I think I'd like to see more of that, then you'll probably be pleased with this.
But you shouldn't.
You shouldn't. Well, you shouldn't have been pleased. Should have been pleased with the first one because it was, and Die Hard is a franchise where he has done increasingly ridiculous things, but he hasn't ever grabbed hold of high tension wires to charge his artificial. It's just he hasn't ever had sex on a racetrack.
Yeah.
Because friction apparently charged that doesn't happen.
No,
you can't just rub against somebody. Anyway, it's an absurd movie, and fans of the first will find exactly the same thing, times 10. So I'm gonna say skip it, obviously.
And I think you all know where we both come from on this.
Yeah, we'll be right back with our summary.